Hello, world, and hello, amazing Philippines. Good day to all. I hope you're doing fine and, of course, feeling well today. And today we're going to discuss another lesson of our technology for teaching and learning. Okay, one. This is again Sir A. Wishing you that you're going to, of course, learn a lot of things and enjoy our lesson for today. So it's module 6 now, and it is, of course, innovation or innovative technologies for assessment tasks in teaching and learning. Okay, that's the title of our module 6. Okay, before we continue, may I ask, probably if you have not subscribed with this channel, kindly click subscribe and of course like or heart this video lecture video about of course our lesson. What are of course expected among us as our learning outcomes? Number one is explain the role of ICT and assessment and learning. The second is of course design and create an electronic assessment portfolio. Then explore the various digital online and offline assessment alternatives available, and describe the current trends in technology-based assessment practices in schools, and of course, lastly, selected appropriate assessment tools. Of course, as what I have mentioned in the previous lessons that we have, that we cannot go away with assessment, particularly if we're going to have teaching and learning, because these three words are closely connected and interwoven. And of course, each of these words provides information that can, of course, determine effective instruction. So in the process, of course, of conceptualizing the plan on how to teach, and as of course the learning outcomes are put in place, the next step to consider is how these are to be evaluated. So there's of course the assessment or the evaluation phase. Okay, for our lesson 16, the title is about ICT and assessment of learning. And according to, of course, Dr. Wilbao, assessment is the process by which information is obtained relative to some known objectives or goal. And it's the process of course, identifying, gathering, and interpreting information about students' learning. So there is now the identifying and gathering and interpreting information. And as a broad term, it includes, of course, testing. And a test is a special form of assessment. It's what we have. There are, of course, words associated with assessments. These are, of course, the following. We have evaluation, we have computation, appraisal, calculation, estimation, judgment. We also have gauging, analysis, rating, pricing, determination, and of course, value judgment. So these are the words, again, that are associated with assessment. Okay. So the question is now, why do we assess? There are three actually reasons. The first, to improve. The second is to inform. The third is to prove. To improve, of course, the score or the way we teach. To inform about, of course, the progress of our students and learners. And of course, to prove that you have done your best as a teacher in teaching. And of course, to prove that your students learned something. So that's it. Another question that we have is, why is it important to assess? There are actually reasons why we need. The first is to find out, of course, how students feel about their work. And this talks about motivation or effort. The second is to find out how students go about the task of doing their work or the process. And then we have, of course, to find out what the students can do and how well they can do it. So this talks about the skill or performance. And of course, to find out what the students know. So this talks about, of course, knowledge. Again, supposing if we're going to ask why it is important to assess, these are the answers. To know the motivation and the effort exerted by the students, to know also the process, and of course, to know their skill and performance, and of course, to know their knowledge. So that's it. We have actually four types of assessment. The first is we have the formative from the word for, okay, or we can derive a word from formative, which is form rather. So this is used to monitor the learning progress of the students during instructions, to provide, of course, feedback, identify errors, modify instructions, and improve learning and, of course, instructions. We have, of course, the summative assessments. It is a type of assessment usually given at the end of the course or unit to determine the extent to which the instructional objectives have been met, mastery of the subject matter, and effectiveness of instruction. We have also diagnostic as the third type of assessment. So from the word, we can term actually, we can have actually diagnose, no? The word diagnose, okay, from diagnostic, okay, assessment. So it's actually given at the beginning of the instruction or during instruction to identify the strengths and weaknesses of students regarding, of course, the topic discussed. And lastly, of course, the authentic assessment. So here, there is the describing of the various forms of assessment that reflects learners' knowledge, the motivation that we have, no? Or he or she have, the achievement and attitudes on instructionally relevant classroom events and accomplishments. We have also, of course, the guidelines for effective assessment. So the first is effective assessment requires clear concept of all intended learning outcomes. So what is the most important here is, of course, the ELO. The second is effectiveness. Effective assessment rather requires that a variety of assessment procedures should be used. No? There should be varied assessment procedures. Then third, effective assessment requires that the instructional relevance of the procedure should be considered. No, there should be, of course, relevance. And effective assessment requires an adequate sample of students' performance. So there should be varied to sample of students' performance. So you do give quizzes, activities, assignment, and projects or performance tasks for that. Other guidelines are these. So effective assessment requires that the procedures must be fair to everybody, no? Then we have effective assessment requires for judging specifications of criteria for judging successful performance. Effective assessment, of course, requires feedback to students, emphasizing strengths of performance and weaknesses to be corrected. And of course, effective assessment must be supported by comprehensive grading and reporting system. So we do, of course, the grading and of course, the reporting. Okay, I've probably said the students have progress. We have, of course, the role of ICT in assessment in learning. So we cannot deny the fact that, of course, ICT is very helpful. Okay, and we need ICT in assessment of learning. So in educational assessment, the use of technology, of course, as an innovation and support for teaching and learning is essential to improve instructions and increase performance. I like that one, improve instructions and increase in performance. So with an effective classroom assessment system in place, a valid demonstration of student learning and progress connected to classroom instructions and experience can be confirmed. This is, of course, according to Bilbao. We have some major advantages of online examination. So we have, of course, the first is time management. Okay, they can have accessibility and flexibility of their time also, no? Okay, they become flexible as they can, of course, access it anytime. Then we have, of course, the statistical analysis and even rather save cost. Another probably thing that we can have with, of course, online examination is the security and privacy or confidentiality. So we need to consider this one. So security needs to be given top priority for any website that you will add information to. So many institutions utilize software, security, and privacy of examination for that matter. We have current trends in assessment in learning. So we have, of course, the 21st century assessment that includes utilizing multiple measures of assessment, increase in the use of technology, and focus on the growth and development of the learner, and differentiating, of course, the roles and responsibilities of the teacher, administrator, and other stakeholders. Okay, and we have some important reasons for teachers to use technology in education according to SAMAC 2006. So the first is motivation. We have also distinctive instructional abilities. We need to have differentiated instructions. Okay. Then we have higher productivity of teachers. Yes, I do believe in that and agree. essential skills for information aids. Then we have, of course, support for new teaching techniques for that matter. Let's have active learning. So in this, of course, generation, we need to, of course, elicit from our students to be active, not participants. When I say active learning, it is any learning activity which, of course, the students interacts or engage with the materials as opposed to passive or passively taking the information. So the teacher will give, of course, learning activities that are intentional, meaningful, and useful for that matter. We have, of course, now the criteria in choosing appropriate assessment tools, and that is, of course, lesson 17. So we have the term here, assessment methods, and these are, of course, strategies, techniques, tools, and instruments for collecting information to determine the extent to which for students they demonstrate desired learning outcomes. So we have considerations in choosing appropriate assessment tools. The first is we have the goals of assessment. What's your goal? What is our goal? The second is methods of assessment. What way? In what way? You can have direct data. Then we have, of course, interval in giving assessment. Okay, it talks about how many hours, not the time constraint. Okay, every day are you going to give assessment? So that's it. Okay. So the teacher may either be utilizing direct or indirect methods of assessment. So examples here of the direct methods are the examinations, the written assignments, the oral presentations, and performance internships. Okay, internship ratings of skills, rather the portfolio, the capstone projects, and etc. We also have, of course, examples of indirect methods. So we have here, of course, the student satisfaction survey, the exit interviews with graduating students. Okay, supposing you'll be graduating or you are already a graduate, we have also, of course, the exit interviews. Then the surveys of student and alumni, the student participation rates, and of course, data on placement and other measures of post-graduation performance. So the teacher, of course, may consider the following characteristics in selecting appropriate assessment tools, whether it is traditional or ICT-based assessment. When we say conventional, that's traditional. So number one is measure the desired level of performance. What about the level of satisfaction, productivity, efficiency, student performance for that matter? Next, we need to know the cost effective, cost effective in terms of effort, time, and money. It is probably effective if we're going to lessen the time. What about the money and the effort exerted? Next is useful, that will, of course, produce results that provide information that can be used in making decisions to improve student learning, and, of course, reasonably accurate and truthful. It can also be, of course, dependable, consistent responses over time, and, of course, the evidence of learning. No, the evidence of being ongoing, not once and done. So there should be continuous, of course, evaluation for that matter, not just once. We have also, of course, creating and utilizing rubric, because in assessment, some, of course, the assessment tasks that we have, will be, of course, creating projects or performance tasks for that matter. So a rubric here is defined as a set of criteria used to determine scoring for an assignment, performance, or product. And this can be, of course, used to score many kinds of written assignments or exams, papers, projects, speeches, and e-portfolios for that. And of course, they're not useful. Okay, however, as a grading mechanism for multiple choice or short answer tests, because there can be, of course, one answer only. We have two types of rubrics. The first is the holistic. Okay, and it provides a single score based on the overall impression of a student performance on a task, and it utilizes holistic rating for a product or a behavior. The second is analytic rubric. It provides, of course, specific feedback along several dimensions and descriptors of products. It breaks, of course, the objective into component parts, and it describes the work of it on its criterion. So there's, of course, the criteria, what that we need to work with. Here is an example of analytic rubric. Okay, this rubric rather is for evaluating banana chips, wherein you can see for criteria, the texture, the packaging, the appearance, and the taste. So you can see, of course, now the description for excellent. The product is excellent. No? The product package is appealing with label and expiry date. The product shape, sizes, techniques, techniques rather, the thickness and the color are even, no burn or dark color, and of course for the taste, there is balance in sweetness and appealing to the palate. The same with satisfactory, which is 3, poor is 2, and of course needs improvement is 1. We have also holistic rubric. So you can see here those criteria we have seen in the previous slide. So criteria and the score, texture is 25, packaging 25, appearance 25, and the taste 25. So another, of course, holistic rubric for visual aid making. So for creativity and artistry is 25, originality is another 25, clarity of instruction is another 25, and of course the visual impact is 25. So that's of course total. Yes, 100%. So that's it. So we have of course options, okay, on what to use. Considering of course the number of students that we have inside the class, so we need to also be mindful in choosing what kind of rubric we're going to use. We have steps in designing rubric. The first is we need to identify a learning goal. The second is, of course, use outcomes that will be measured with a rubric, and then develop or adapt an existing rubric. Then we have to share it with students, and of course, lastly, to assess and grade. So these are the steps in designing rubric for, okay, us that we need to follow. Then we, of course, the last is after, of course, assessing and grading, we need to analyze and do the reporting. So we need to have the report for students and even probably for teachers. We have also computer-based assessment. So when we say computer-based assessment, this is the practice of assigning quizzes and students and tests rather to students or learners on a computer instead of paper. Okay, the computer-based assessments are already, of course, used widely in many e-learning environments. We have also the computer-based testing. It is more efficient than the paper-based test because it is individualized testing and has faster score reporting with, of course, within few minutes after, of course, submission. And there is computerized delivery of objective tests, and we can probably have more advantages compared to the paper pencil test. The following are, of course, the advantages. So the first is the creation of item bank. So you can create no item bank with, of course, the test that you have. Okay, or questions that invites, of course, possibility of each student being presented with a paper made up of different questions, but of an equivalent standard. Next is automatic computerized marking facilities, immediate feedback for students. So you can, of course, set, like for example, Canvas for that matter, you can set, okay, the answers in your test. Then students can be invited to sit test frequently as they need or they find useful, and computerized recording of results facilitates the analysis of groups responses rather to questions. Then we have, of course, the paper and pencil testing. So this is, of course, the most common assessment procedure utilized by teacher to gather formal evidence. And the paper and pencil instruments refer to the general group of assessment tools in which students read questions and, of course, respond in writing. So some, of course, examples, of course, are the multiple choice test, the true false, the analogy matching type, the simple recall, and many others. That's the paper and pencil instrument. Okay, we have also the electronic portfolio. And this electronic portfolio can be known also as the e-portfolio or digital portfolio, the online portfolio or e-polio. And when I say e-polio, it's a collection of electronic evidence assembled and managed by a user, usually on the web. So it may include, of course, in the input text, the electronic files, the images, multimedia, no, the blog entries and hyperlinks. Now, e-portfolios are both, of course, demonstration of the user's abilities and the platforms for self-expression. According to Helen Barre, she is the guru of an e-portfolio. She mentioned that an e-portfolio uses electronic technologies to allow teachers and students to collect and organize portfolio artifacts in many media types. And we have, of course, the types of e-portfolio. We have the evaluation, assessment, portfolio. We also have the learning e-portfolios. Okay, these portfolios are typically created by learners as a part of the learning. And we have the ideal portfolio, which contains all the works of students, and it is not given to provide students a grade. We also have, of course, documentation portfolio, which provides collection of work over time showing students, okay, growth and improvement reflecting students' learning and identified outcomes. And lastly, of course, the showcase or professional e-portfolios. So these e-portfolios are primarily a way to demonstrate the highlights of students' academic career. So that's showcase. So in all, we have 5 types of e-portfolios. We have, of course, stages in making e-portfolio. Okay, development. Now, our stages in e-portfolio development, according to Barre, the first, we need to define the context and goals. What's our context? So we need to consider the context of our students also. What about your goals? You go back to your ELO, intended learning outcomes. Second is we need to collect artifacts and, of course, design. Okay, there's collection now, then selecting specific artifacts and reflection. So not all, of course, of the pictures there can be used. Okay, you can choose the best, probably pictures, designs, or artifacts for that. Then select specific artifacts and reflect. So there is, of course, reflection after selecting. Then organize artifacts and finalize the portfolio. Then package portfolio and present to appropriate audience. So there is, of course, now the packaging. Of course, the more creative you are, the better. And then the more consistent you are with, of course, the instruction, the better portfolio that you will have. So that's the end of our lesson. Here are our references for you to have. Okay. Again, I am your Sir A saying thank you so much. I hope you learned something today. So take good care, be safe, and God bless. Okay. Kindly click like, heart, and click the share button. Okay. Or subscribe with my YouTube channel. God bless everybody. Thank you. Bye.